AITA for telling my ex-husband that I am only responsible for our children, he should be responsible for his children with another woman and that I will not pay for them. I honestly don't even know where to start. I feel like I'm living in a parallel universe sometimes because this situation has gotten so out of hand, and no matter how many times I try to draw a clear line, my ex just keeps trying to bulldoze right through it. I'm a 35-year-old woman, and I was married to my ex-husband Jake, who is 38, for nearly 10 years. We have 2 kids together, our daughter is 9, and our son is 7. We divorced 3 years ago, and while it was incredibly painful and complicated, I had genuinely hoped we could eventually reach a place where we could co-parent peacefully for the sake of our children. But that hope has slowly unraveled, piece by piece. The reason we divorced wasn't some vague, we grew apart, kind of thing. I found out Jake had been having an affair. Not a one-time mistake. Not even a short-lived fling. An actual full-blown, long-term affair with a woman named Melissa. The betrayal was crushing. We had built a life together. I stayed home with our kids for a few years while he worked. I supported his career moves. I thought we were on the same team. And all that time, he was building another life behind my back. Once everything came out, it was like a house of cards collapsing. I found out about the affair, we separated, and within a few months of the divorce being finalized, Melissa was already pregnant with twins. Not long after, she gave birth, and Jake suddenly had not just a new partner, but 2 new children. That in itself was a lot to process, but I knew I had to focus on our children. I've worked hard to maintain stability and a sense of normalcy for them. They didn't choose any of this chaos. Jake has visitation every other weekend. That arrangement has mostly worked fine logistically. Emotionally, though, it's been rocky. Ever since the twins were born, Jake has been pushing this fantasy of one big, blended family. At first, I didn't really understand what he meant. I figured he wanted the kids to get along, and sure, that makes sense. I want our children to feel safe and loved wherever they are. If they're at his house, and the twins are there, then of course it's better if everyone is kind to each other. But what he meant went way beyond that. One weekend when he came to pick up the kids, he casually said something like, "Maybe next week we could all go to the park, the 5 of us." I thought he was joking, so I kind of laughed and said, "The 5 of us?" He said, "Yeah, you, me, the kids, and the twins." I stared at him, trying to figure out if this was sarcasm. It wasn't. He looked completely serious. I told him that was not going to happen. He said, "Why not? They're siblings. We should raise them as a family." I told him that he and Melissa are the parents of the twins. I'm not. I thought that was the end of that bizarre idea, but apparently, it was just the beginning. Over the next few months, he kept ramping it up. He started making these offhand requests that seemed innocent on the surface, like if I was going shoe shopping for our kids, could I maybe grab a pair for the twins too? Just something inexpensive, he said. I said no. Then it was, the daycare costs are getting really high with both twins there. Could you maybe chip in a little? Just a little help. I laughed because again, I assumed he had momentarily lost his grip on reality. But he wasn't joking. He looked hurt and confused when I refused. That's when he said something along the lines of, "They're part of your children's lives now. They're siblings. You're being cold." I reiterated, as calmly as I could, that while I understand the twins are my kids' half-siblings, they are not my children. Melissa is their mother. Jake is their father. I didn't make them, I didn't agree to raise them, and I have zero legal, financial, or emotional responsibility for them. My job is to protect, care for, and raise the 2 children I brought into this world. Period. He didn't like that. Things only got worse from there. The most infuriating part is that he started bringing this nonsense up with our kids. Our 9-year-old daughter came home after a weekend with him and asked me in the most heartbreaking little voice, "Mom, why do you hate my brother and sister?" I felt like I had been punched in the chest. I sat down with her and gently asked where she got that idea. She said, "Dad said you don't want to be a family with them because you don't like them." I was livid. Jake was now using our children as emotional pawns to guilt me into stepping into a role I never agreed to. I calmly explained to my daughter that I love her and her brother more than anything in the world, and that while I'm glad she loves her younger siblings, I'm not their mommy. I told her that every family looks different, and it's okay to love people even if they don't live in the same house or have the same parents. I reassured her that I would never stop her from having a relationship with the twins, but that doesn't mean I have to take on responsibilities that don't belong to me. After that conversation, I sent Jake a long, strongly worded message. I told him to never, ever put words in my mouth to our kids again. I told him that what he was doing, painting me as a villain to manipulate our children's feelings, was not just dishonest but cruel. I reminded him that I have never stood in the way of our kids having a bond with the twins. But that bond is his responsibility to foster, not mine. I told him, in no uncertain terms, that I am not going to spend money, time, or emotional energy raising children that are not mine. That is his job and Melissa's. Not mine. He responded by calling me selfish. He said I was teaching our kids to be cold and divisive. He said I was damaging their ability to understand what family really means. He told me I was punishing innocent children just because I was still bitter about the divorce. That accusation hit a nerve because I have bent over backwards to keep my feelings about Jake and Melissa separate from my parenting. I've never badmouthed them in front of our kids. I've never blocked visits or interfered with his time. I've tried to keep things neutral and respectful, even when it hurt. Now I feel like I'm at a breaking point. I'm exhausted from being the bad guy just because I won't co-parent children that are not mine. I'm tired of being manipulated and guilt-tripped and made to feel like my boundaries are heartless. I am doing everything I can to raise my children well. And yet, I'm being treated like I'm some wicked stepmother character for refusing to raise the kids that came out of his affair. I feel like I'm losing my mind. So now I'm wondering, am I truly being cold? Am I wrong for drawing this line so firmly? Should I be more accommodating for the sake of our children's blended family dynamic? Or is this just an absolutely wild overreach on his part? Because from where I stand, it feels like I'm being gaslit into mothering the children of the woman who helped blow up my marriage. And I just can't do it. So am I the asshole? Update 1. Okay. Wow. I honestly didn't expect my original post to blow up the way it did. I just needed to vent and try to wrap my head around a situation that had me questioning reality, and honestly, my sanity. I can't thank everyone enough for the flood of support, the encouragement, and even the tough love comments. A lot of what people said gave me clarity, but one comment in particular hit me like a freight train. Someone wrote, "Is it possible Jake told Melissa that OP would help raise the twins?" That question gave me chills. I hadn't even considered that angle. I had been so wrapped up in how Jake was trying to manipulate me, with the guilt trips, the kids, the emotional blackmail, that it didn't even occur to me that he might be running the same kind of game on Melissa. But the more I thought about it, the more the puzzle pieces started clicking into place. One memory in particular came flooding back to me with new weight. About a year ago, I ran into Melissa at a school fundraiser. Our kids all go to the same school, so it was bound to happen eventually. I remember being tense, expecting it to be awkward, but she surprised me. She was really friendly, overly friendly, in hindsight. She came up to me with this big smile and said something like, "It's great that we can all be in this together, for the kids." At the time, I thought it was just awkward small talk. I nodded, gave her a polite smile, and moved on. But now, thinking back on that moment through a new lens, I realized it sounded a whole lot like someone under the impression that we were partners in some kind of extended family arrangement. Like she genuinely thought I was on board. The thought made my stomach turn. If Jake had been spinning this fantasy of unity and shared responsibility to her too, that changed the whole game. So I decided to reach out. I don't have Melissa's number, but we're connected on a school messaging app where parents can communicate about class parties, field trips, and other school-related things. I sent her a message, polite but direct. I told her that I believed there might be a misunderstanding about the nature of our co-parenting relationship and the roles we all play in our children's lives. I said that I had been getting requests from Jake to provide financial and childcare support for the twins, and that I had never agreed to this. I wasn't sure what kind of response I was going to get. I expected denial, confusion, maybe even defensiveness. What I didn't expect was how fast she replied. Her message came through almost immediately. She said, "Wait, Jake told me you agreed to help support the twins because you understand that all his children are your children too." I just stared at the screen. My brain short-circuited for a moment. She went on. She said Jake had told her from the beginning that, while things were tense between him and me after the divorce, I had eventually come around and wanted to do what was best for all the kids. According to him, I was contributing to the twins' education fund, I was helping out with occasional babysitting when he was busy, and I had even offered to cover some health expenses to ease the financial burden on them as a good faith gesture. I was stunned. I nearly dropped my phone. It felt like my entire body went cold. Jake wasn't just twisting words or manipulating situations anymore, he had created an entirely fictional version of events and sold it to Melissa as truth. A truth she had been believing for who knows how long. Suddenly, all of her friendliness and her comments about being in this together made an awful kind of sense. She wasn't just being weirdly optimistic about a blended family, she thought she was working alongside someone who had actually agreed to co-parent her children. The more we messaged, the clearer things became. She told me Jake often brushed off her concerns about money, telling her not to worry because he had help. When she asked what he meant, he'd vaguely reference support from the other side and we're managing as a team. She told me she had assumed I was involved in some way, especially since Jake always framed me as a generous, progressive co-parent who believed in breaking down traditional family boundaries. She even said she felt guilty sometimes that I was helping with her kids when I didn't have to. I sat there reading that, trying to hold back the rage crawling up my throat. I felt sick. This man had been lying not just to me, but to everyone. He'd been playing both sides. He was telling me that I was selfish and cold for refusing to help with the twins, while telling her that I was already helping and supportive. He had manufactured an entire story to avoid taking full responsibility himself, throwing me under the bus in the process. And worse, he weaponized our children to further that narrative. He made me the villain in the eyes of my own daughter, just to keep his fantasy intact. I didn't even know what to do next. On one hand, it felt validating. For so long, I thought I was just losing my grip. That maybe I was being too harsh, too stubborn. But now I could see with painful clarity that I had been the victim of an elaborate, sustained manipulation. But that validation came with a deep, boiling anger I can't even fully describe. He wasn't just gaslighting me anymore, he was using everyone around him as pawns to avoid taking responsibility for the consequences of his choices. So not only has he been trying to manipulate me, but he's been lying to her to avoid financial responsibility himself. Update 2. After talking with Melissa, everything moved faster than I ever expected. The moment I sent her those messages and she saw, in black and white, just how much of a fantasy Jake had been spinning, it was like a dam broke. She immediately called him. According to her, it wasn't just a fight, it was a full-blown meltdown on both sides. She later sent me screenshots of their messages, and reading them felt surreal. Jake had been feeding her lies that were so elaborate, so specific, it made me wonder how long he'd been building this narrative. In one screenshot, he told her that I was emotionally involved in the lives of all the children, and that I had stepped up to co-parent all 4 kids as a single unit. He even had the audacity to write that I had promised to take on some of the expenses, because we are one family. That last part made my skin crawl. Not just because it was untrue, but because he was using the language of unity, compassion, and shared parenting as a tool of manipulation. He was cloaking his lies in the vocabulary of emotional maturity, which made the deception even more disgusting. But then I got to the most absurd part of all. Jake had told Melissa that I was already financially supporting the twins. He told her that he didn't want to ask her for too much money or stress her out because, in his words, Olivia covers most of the children's needs. My name. He used my name as a get-out-of-responsibility-free card. He positioned me as the financial backbone of a household I have zero part in. He made it sound like I was the one carrying the weight so he didn't have to. And the kicker? He wasn't even contributing fairly to our own kids' lives. The reality is, our 2 children live with me full-time. I don't receive child support from Jake, not a cent. I never did. It was part of the initial divorce agreement because I was working full-time and just wanted to be done with the legal mess. I handled everything myself, school supplies, extracurriculars, healthcare, insurance, new shoes every time a growth spurt hit, everything. I have been the sole financial provider for our kids since the divorce. And while it hasn't always been easy, I've never once asked him for help. Not because I didn't need it, but because I didn't trust him to follow through. So for him to turn around and tell Melissa that he didn't need to provide more for their kids because I was footing the bill, I can't even describe the rage that ignited in me. It wasn't just a lie. It was a calculated attempt to paint himself as generous and guilt-free while offloading his actual responsibilities onto a person he betrayed and abandoned. That was when I truly understood the depth of his manipulation. He wasn't just bending the truth to avoid difficult conversations. He had constructed an entire alternate reality where he was the misunderstood but noble father doing his best, unfairly burdened by two women who should just pick up the slack while he floated between households like a martyr. I couldn't shake the feeling of being used, not for my time, not for my money, but for my image. He used me as a shield against financial pressure, against emotional accountability, against consequences. And he did it while accusing me of being cold and divisive, while letting our daughter cry in my arms thinking I hated her siblings. So I started documenting everything. Screenshots of Melissa's messages. Emails. The old texts from Jake asking me to buy shoes, to babysit, to contribute to daycare. The messages where I told him no, clearly, firmly, and without ambiguity. The photos I've taken of receipts, insurance payments, the checklists from school every year that I filled out on my own. Every little thing I've done that shows I have been handling this alone, not for applause, not for gratitude, but because my kids deserve a mother who shows up for them. I don't plan to take him to court right now. But that may change. I'm not ruling anything out anymore. What this has made clear is that I need to be prepared, not just for legal purposes, but to protect myself and my children emotionally. Jake has shown me that he is not just irresponsible. He's dangerous in the way he rewrites history, the way he manipulates people's perceptions, and the way he puts his needs ahead of everyone else's without a second thought. And then there's the emotional aftermath. After all this unfolded, I sat down with my kids again. I waited until we had a calm afternoon with no distractions. I wanted them to feel safe. I explained that I would always support them, that I love them deeply, and nothing will ever change that. I told them I'm proud of them for caring about their siblings. I told them it's okay to love the twins, to want to spend time with them, to feel like one big group when they're at their dad's house. But I also told them that there are limits to what I can do, and that's not wrong. That doesn't mean I don't care. It just means I'm one person, and my job is to take care of them first. I told them that love doesn't always look like what you see in movies or on TV. Sometimes love means drawing boundaries. Sometimes it means saying no, even when it's hard. I told them that even when adults mess up, and yes, I was thinking about Jake, the most important thing they can learn is how to stay grounded in what's real. They deserve honesty. They deserve stability. And I am going to give it to them even if their father doesn't. Update 3. This will probably be my final update, and to be honest, I finally feel calmer, like the fog of emotional chaos that's been lingering around me for years has finally started to lift. After everything that came out between Jake and Melissa, the lies, the manipulation, the unraveling of the fantasy he had carefully crafted, things reached a strange kind of resolution. Not a neat one, not a clean one, but enough that I know where I stand now. After Melissa confronted him and saw the screenshots and lies spelled out in his own words, I thought she might finally see him for who he really is. And for a brief moment, it seemed like she did. She was upset, rightfully angry, and shocked by the sheer scale of his deception. But that clarity didn't last long. Within a week, I received another message from her, but this time, it was something different. She wrote that she had taken time to reflect, and while she was hurt, she said she understood that Jake was just trying to keep the family together. She added that it's hard for him to be a father of 4 children, and that he's under a lot of pressure. I stared at that message for a long time. I didn't reply. Not out of spite, not out of anger, I simply had no emotion left to give to this drama. I wasn't even surprised. I knew from the beginning that if someone wants to believe a lie badly enough, they will find a way to justify it. Melissa chose to close her eyes, to sweep it all under the rug in favor of the illusion. That's her choice, and I won't interfere with it. But I refuse to be part of it. My only priority now is my children. They live with me full-time, and I support them entirely on my own. Every school fee, every dentist appointment, every new season of clothes, every after-school club or camp or birthday party, it's all on me. And I've made peace with that. I'm not looking for applause or sympathy, I'm just stating facts. Their lives are stable and full because I work hard to make them that way. I am their safe place. Their constant. Their reality. Jake still has visitation rights every other weekend, but he has started to cancel more often than not. The reasons vary, but the common theme is that he has a lot to do with the kids, meaning the twins. I don't argue. I don't chase him down. I don't guilt-trip him. I simply tell the kids when their plans change and hold them through the disappointment when they ask why Daddy didn't come. It's not fair to them, and it breaks my heart every single time, but I can't change who he is. What I can do is make sure they know I will always show up, every day, every time. After everything that's happened, I decided to take one final step to protect myself and bring some clarity to the mess Jake left in his wake. Through a lawyer, I had a document drawn up, clean, official, and legally binding. It states that neither party, under any circumstances, has a financial or legal obligation to support children that are not biologically theirs. It sounds clinical, even cold, but it had to be done. Trust was broken beyond repair. This wasn't about holding a grudge, it was about putting guardrails in place so that no one could ever twist the truth again. When Jake received the document, his reaction was exactly what I expected. He called me vindictive. He said I was making him an outsider in his own family, and turning the children against him. He accused me of being petty, of punishing him for the past, of breaking apart what he called our extended family. But the truth is, I wasn't doing any of those things. I was drawing a clear line, one that should have been there all along. I told him before, and I stand by it now, I will never stop our children from having a relationship with him. I have never once said a negative word about him to them. But I will no longer allow myself to be manipulated. I won't let him use guilt or confusion or emotional blackmail to get his way. Not with me, and definitely not with them. Children need to see that it's okay to have boundaries. That saying no is not the same as being cruel. That love doesn't mean letting someone trample over you. I want my daughter and son to grow up knowing that it's okay to stand firm when someone is treating them unfairly, even if that person is family. Especially then. As for Melissa, she's back to posting about one big family on social media. Pictures of the twins with captions like "Sibling love is everything" and "Blended blessings." Every now and then, our kids show up in a photo when they visit Jake, and I don't comment. I don't engage. She's built her narrative, and I'm no longer interested in correcting it. If she wants to live in a version of reality where everything is perfect and loving and equal, that's her right. But I've seen behind the curtain. I know the truth. I've lived it. So, am I the asshole? No. I don't think so. I think I've been more patient, more tolerant, and more forgiving than most people would be in my situation. I think I've bent over backward to create peace and protect my children from the fallout of choices that weren't theirs. And I think it's okay to finally stop bending. My children know I am always on their side. They know I show up. They know I keep my promises. They know they can trust me. And that's enough. That's everything.